And I can't harp on this enough. It is extraordinarily rare for Michigan to do what they just did before this national championship game. And whether people like this or not, it doesn't matter if you don't like it. It's the cold hard truth. Michigan. Michigan. We got to talk about them. Now, as we all know, a few days ago, Michigan beat Alabama. And clap it up, clap it up, clap it up. I am really happy for that Michigan, not just the fan base, but the entire program, the players, everybody associated with them. Congratulations. It's been a long time coming. And I know that win against Alabama was so sweet because the past 2 years in the playoffs, yeah, you got there, but you didn't finish business, and it left a sour taste in your mouth, which I completely understand. The past 2 years summed up for Michigan were great, and I'd label them as a success because you won the Big Ten, you beat Big Bro, or now Little Bro Ohio State, but it left that bittersweet feeling in your mouth because you didn't cap it off. But this year, Michigan winds up getting over the hump of losing in the semifinals, and they beat Alabama. And here's the sad part about it. If you don't cap it off and beat Washington, I hate to be this guy, but it seems like it's all for nothing. So we'll see what happens there, but for now at least, I want to address this. And I've said this a couple times since the Alabama loss, but I haven't made a separate video talking about it, and I feel like I need to, and I don't just need to, I want to. The entire Michigan fan base before the Alabama game, leading up to it, during the game, and after, was nothing short of honorable. They were fantastic, and I think this is something that gets brushed under the rug, but I'm not going to. I want to speak about it, and it needs to get talked about. We hear all these stories of the toxic fan bases and how fans have this entitlement attitude and they're terrible and blah, 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 so on. You've heard the stories before. You'll see certain people say, oh, well, this fan base has obnoxious fans. This fan base does this, that, and so on. And I think perspective's key because it doesn't matter who you are. You're going to find bad fans and good fans in any and every fan base. But I tell you what, man, I haven't seen a bad Michigan fan up until this point. And the way they acted after the Alabama loss, keep in mind, everybody hates Alabama, and a lot of people were hating on Michigan this year. It was very respectable, and it was what I've said already before, businesslike. As excited they were for the win, they beat Alabama. They're going to the national freaking championship. They still paid their respects to Nick Saban and Alabama and the fans. There was none of this, ha, look, Alabama, you lost, you suck, we're going to the championship. There wasn't any of that. After they got done celebrating their win and they saw how Alabama fans reacted and they saw how Alabama fans were taking it, I'd argue and say that Michigan fans were more comforting towards Alabama fans than anyone else. And I guess the reason for that would be, and I had a few people tell me this, is because they've been there before. They've been on the other side of it. And all in all, the main reason I'm bringing this up is because that is what sports are about, and that's why I love this college football community. Because we got all types of fans all over the country currently watching this video. And all throughout the season, while we're going at each other's necks, at the end of the day, I feel like we all relate to one another and we all appreciate one another. After that Michigan game, I definitely felt it as an Alabama fan. Let me read you off this comment here from Scotty left on one of the previous videos. As a Michigan fan, I was so looking forward to rubbing this in, but after watching that game, I have way too much respect for the entire Alabama program and its fans. The humility shown by Saban and Milroe at the press conference was impressive. Keep your heads up, guys. Alabama is always reloading. Think back to that Texas loss and then the close USF game, and everybody wrote them off only to watch them come back and lose in the semis by 1 play/3 yards. I'm not going to read them all off, but I'll pop up some of the kind comments and kind words that Michigan fans and just fans in general were leaving on the videos. And I even saw Michigan fans tweet out that they went to the game and they loved the Alabama fan base. And I'm curious, I'm sure we got some people watching this video that went to the game. Let me know how the interactions were. I did want to shed some light on that though. Major shout out to all the Michigan fans out there. Y'all know I like certain fan bases, and I love the Oklahoma fan base. That's one that always comes to my mind first. I enjoy the Tennessee fan base. I don't know, though. I think I'm going to have to put Michigan at number 1. Y'all know how Deion Sanders, he ranks his kids or sons, or he does something like that? Well, I have my own rankings for fan bases. And of course, by the way, to give you some context, I'm not going to rank my own fan base Alabama because I'm just not going to do that. That's not really fair, but for right now at least, we got a new number 1, and it's no other than Michigan. That's my top fan base out there, and Ohio Little Bro State fans, take notes. But on a serious note here, let's lock in, let's get down to business, and talk about the football team. Not the fans, but the team. If you've been keeping up with the channel dating back to the offseason, I have had Michigan ranked number 2 the entire season. Had them ranked number 2 in my preseason poll, and all the time this season, I tried telling people, well, what was the thing that everybody brought up first? Let's go over that. Oh, well, Matt, Michigan's not playing anybody. How do you really know if they're that good? And blah, 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 blah. Well, here's my logic behind it. It didn't matter if Michigan was playing Youngstown State or Iowa. I knew they were a really good team. To all the people that were saying Michigan wasn't playing anybody, that's the equivalent to if LeBron James goes to your local Boys and Girls Club or YMCA and beats a team 15-0 and you say, oh, well, yeah, LeBron's decent, but He wasn't really playing anybody. You see what I'm saying? It doesn't matter if LeBron James is playing in the NBA or the Boys and Girls Club. He's one of the best players. Same thing here. I didn't care if Michigan was playing East Carolina or Alabama. I knew they was one of the best teams in the country. It just took everybody else a long time to realize that. And also, I was preaching to everybody they were going to beat Ohio Lilbro State yet again. Just watch, and it happened. As to why people thought Ohio State was going to beat Michigan, I have no idea, but different conversation for a different day. That's what I just call straight up delusional thinking. There's no way anyone should have picked Ohio State to win that game. No way. Don't even get me started on Lilbro State. You know how I can get, so let's get back on topic here with Michigan. As a matter of fact, let's pull up their schedule this year so I can get exact numbers and exact scores here. They didn't even wind up playing a close game until, I'm not even going to count the Penn State game. That game, the score is deceiving. I guess I'll say, yeah, Maryland. They did struggle somewhat against Maryland, but I think that was a case of they were playing down to a competition. After that, they go out there, play really good against Michigan, and they dominate Iowa, and then, as we all know, they beat Alabama. And Michigan has done nothing more, nothing less than have a quietly good season. And I know it's weird to use the word quietly and Michigan in the same sentence considering they have over 1,000 wins. But the reason I use quietly is because all throughout the year, we didn't really talk about them too much. They're not a splash in the pan. There's nothing fancy about them. They're not this big and bad ferocious team like Georgia, although their defense has played like that this year, but you get the point I'm trying to make. They don't have 6 first-rounders on their defense like Georgia had a couple years ago. On the flip side, they don't have this high-powered offense like you saw in Alabama a few years ago. They don't have anything that really sticks out to you. They play an old-school style of football, ground and pound. They're going to do some play action here and there, and their quarterback's going to make about 5 to 7 big-time throws per game. They're not going to try to score 50 points. If they can score 30 points and win the game, they'll do that. They'll just run the clock out. They rely on their defense like an old-school team, and everything about them doesn't fit the modern era of 2023, but it works, which to me makes them that much more fascinating to break down. And even though they were favored in the game, and let me remind some of y'all that Michigan was supposed to win the game, okay? Alabama was the underdog. I think a lot of people have forgotten that. No, this was not an upset, okay? Alabama was supposed to lose technically on paper. Although I disagree with that. I thought Alabama should have been the 1.5 to 2 point favorite, maybe 2.5, but I digress. Michigan winds up winning the game, but they did something that not too many teams can say. They dominated Alabama, and they beat them straight up. Normally, when Alabama loses, take a look at Nick Saban's career the past 14 to 15 years. Whenever Alabama has lost, what was the conversation? Oh, well, that team, Ole Miss or Texas A&M, they didn't beat Alabama. Alabama beat themselves. They had 4 turnovers. They had 5 turnovers. And for the past 15 years, that's not an excuse. That's the cold hard facts. Maybe once or twice since 2009, Alabama just straight up got beat up and down. It was a rarity, and the reason it never happened is because Alabama always had the best coaching staff and the best players. So essentially, the only way to beat them is for them to beat themselves. Or at least a combination of it. Maybe they only have 2 turnovers, but your team plays their A+ game and they play out of their mind. Well, in this Alabama-Michigan game, it was the opposite. The only reason Alabama was in the game and they had a chance to win it at the end is because of all the mistakes Michigan made. If Alabama won this game, it most definitely wasn't going to be because Alabama beat Michigan. It was because Michigan would have lost the game. Michigan tried. They did. They tried really hard to give this game to Alabama, but Alabama didn't take it at the end. At the end of the game, Alabama's up 20-13. They need a stop on defense. Couldn't get it. They get the ball back with just a field goal to win the game. Couldn't do that. Okay, well, they go into overtime. No big deal. Their defense yet again can't get a stop, so it's back-to-back no stops from the defense, and their offense yet again can't score. And keep in mind, Alabama didn't have any turnovers. Well, they did have the 1 fumble, my apologies, but it didn't even hurt them because Michigan wound up missing the field goal. Michigan gifted Alabama 7 points early on in the game, okay? Let's get that straight. And outside of that, I'm not going to sit up here and say McCarthy diced him up, but he did what I expected him to do. Be an elite game manager. 17 for 27, 220, 3 tutties, 2 0 INTs, and a QBR of right at 92. It doesn't get too much better than that, especially against this elite Alabama defense. Michigan bullied the bully. There's not too much more to be said. And I can't harp on this enough. It is extraordinarily rare for Michigan to do what they just did before this national championship game. They didn't need Alabama to mess up, and they still beat Alabama. Yeah, Alabama had a couple bad snaps here and there. We've already talked all about that, but we're all in the same boat here. Michigan made way more mistakes. And whether people like this or not, it doesn't matter if you don't like it. It's the cold hard truth. Michigan is here to stay. It doesn't matter what happens in the national championship game. They ain't going nowhere anytime soon and for the years to come. I want you to think about this. They have made the playoffs 3 years in a row. 3! And with it expanding to 12 team next year, I'd like to assume they'd make it again next year. They need more recognition, man. And here's the last thing I'm going to say, and it was the main focal point as to why I'm even making this video. This isn't just a great football team. This is a great program. They have a great culture currently, and they're building something special. There's a reason Blake Corum came back, and more than likely why J.J. McCarthy is going to come back next year. It means something to these kids to put on that Michigan uniform and say, hey, I played at Michigan. At other schools with all this transfer portal and NIL bullcrap going on, not so much. You can't say the same thing. And I know Michigan's not too involved in the NIL department, but that might be a blessing in disguise. Because these kids that play for Michigan currently, they're not playing for money. They're playing for the love of the game. A person who has passion will always outperform a person who just does something for money. Do what you want with that information. Let me know your thoughts down below about that.